Well, good morning, everyone. This is Billy Trout, the manager of taxpayer education for the Tennessee Department of Revenue. And on behalf of our commissioner, David Jarrett Gano, and our staff and taxpayer services, we want to welcome you to today's presentation on the professional privilege tax. We appreciate you joining us today. Obviously, we're going to have a smaller group here today, and that's okay. We'll have a good discussion and be able to cover the topic completely with the help of the folks that are joining me now. Miss Katie Julian, you see on your screen here. Wave to everybody, Katie. Make sure you're sure not an AI or something. Yeah, there you go. Katie is a real person, and she will be guiding you through the material here today. And we also have our subject matter expert, Miss Denise Smith, and we are glad to have you on board. She'll be interjecting different things that may be of interest to you regarding this particular tax. We also have Deirdre Smith, who is going to be tagging along and looking at your chat questions that you put in later on. And we have our assistant director, Dan Vinson, taxpayer services on board as well today. So we're fully staffed and ready for you to ask any great questions that you might have on this tax. So with that, we'll go ahead and hand this over to Katie and walk you through the basic part of the material first. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Billy. Hey, everyone. Thanks to Demi and Deidre for being with us today and providing their expertise on professional privilege tax. I just want to cover a few things before we get going. First of all, we are recording this webinar. You can find it either later today or tomorrow in our webinar video library. You can see a link to that here. Let me turn on my laser pointer here. If you do need CPE credit for attending this webinar, you'll have the option as you complete the survey at the end to check yes that you need CPE credit. We do have chat closed right now. We'll be opening it up for a chat FAQ session during the second portion of the webinar. So hold your questions until then. If we don't get around to your question, we'll give you this information again, but here you see a way to email us or call our general tax line. And also, I believe this is in the chat right now, but you can scan this QR code and it'll take you directly over to a PDF of this presentation. You cannot click directly on hyperlinks within the WebEx, but if you download this PDF, then you can click on all these hyperlinks. So we'll give you another QR code on the next screen of that. And like I said, I think there's a link to it over in the chat. So today's free Taxpayer Services webinar is on professional privilege tax. I will say that this information is current as of the date we are presenting it, May 27th, 2025, and may not reflect legislative and other subsequent changes. Of course, Tennessee General Assembly is done for this season, for this year, and there were no laws that I can recall currently that affected professional privilege tax, but every year seems to be they put forth legislation to change pro fee is what we call it, but I don't think there were any changes made to pro fee this year. So here's just a brief overview of what we're going to be going through today. The professional privilege tax, which we refer to as pro fee, and it's a lot easier to say, and that's what I'll be referring to it as throughout this webinar. It's an occupation tax that is imposed on people with an active Tennessee license or registration to practice specific professions. We're going to go into what those professions are. We're going to share with you some resources, who's liable for it, how do you pay, when do you pay, and then we will have time during the second half of today to answer your questions, and we'll open up chat at that point. We'll go ahead and show you here the laws regarding pro fee are in Tennessee Code annotated 67-4-1701 and 1702. Okay. Just sharing a few resources here. We've got a tax info page about pro fee. There are several articles about pro fee in our revenue help section, and there are some important notices specifically about pro fee. So who is subject to Pro-Fee. We've got persons registered as lobbyists, persons licensed or registered as agents, broker-dealers, investment advisors, and persons licensed as attorneys by the Supreme Court of Tennessee. Um, so on or before May 1st of each year, we notify these people that are subject to this tax. So about a month before the due date. The due date of the tax is June 1st. We communicate with the licensing uh, and regulatory agencies that license these professions you see here. We communicate with them. Our system communicates with them. When we get a list from them that you have an active license as of around May 1st, then you're going to get a letter from us, from the Tennessee Department of Revenue saying, hey, you owe Pro-Fee and it's due on June 1st. So you've got a little bit of time between when you get a notice from us and when the tax is due if you need to deactivate your license. But we always recommend doing that well in advance because it can take some time. If you have an active license on June 1st, then the tax is due. Just going through some history here because we've had a lot happen with Pro-Fee over the last few years. Going way back, 1992 is when the Tennessee General Assembly passed the act that brought about Pro-Fee. The privilege tax was established. The actual law, TCA, in 67-4-1701 says the engaging in any vocation, profession, business occupation named in this part is declared to be a privilege taxable by the state alone. It also states that uh, the revenue is deposited into the state's general fund. So every year, like I said, there are bills to change Pro-Fee. Well, a lot happened over starting about 2020. Over from 1992 until then, a lot of professions were added over the years. But in 2020, actually it was 2019, Public Chapter 478 really changed things and knocked a bunch of previously taxable uh, occupations off of Pro-Fee. You can see this list here: audiologist, chiropractor, dentist, optometrist, pharmacist, podiatrist, psychologist, speech pathologist, accountants, architects, engineers, landscape architects, real estate principal brokers, sports agents, and veterinarians. Uh, they became not liable for Pro-Fee, exempt beginning June 1st of 2020. Pretty huge there, and you can see there's a link to the public chapter and to the important notice. Then just a couple years later, Public Chapter 1083 in 2022 exempted physicians and osteopathic physicians. And there's an important notice about that as well, link to that there. So lots changed here in the past couple years. And just to go back one slide, after all the changes, these are the occupations that are still liable for Pro-Fee. And I will say, um, a lot of people are confused, why just these occupations? How come some got exempted and these are still not exempt? Here at Department of Revenue, we just administer the laws. We don't make them. Like I said, there are bills that are introduced every year to change things up with Pro-Fee, but you'll have to reach out to your representatives, to your state representatives about that if you have questions about that. So moving on here. Um, who is liable for Pro-Fee? Is it the individual or the business? Demi, I'm going to bring you on here. If you could join us here to kind of help clarify this a little bit, because I think it's a little bit of a confusing topic. So the tax is based on an individual's license for lobbyists, advisors, and attorneys, and it's based on the CRD registration for an individual or a business for securities agents, investment advisors, and broker dealers. Can you break that down a little bit for us,
Correct.
please?
With lobbyists and investment advisors and attorneys, their licenses are individual, whereas with securities agents and broker-dealer firms and everything like that, they are they have the CRD and the IARD registration. So you want me to break down the single member?
Sure, yeah,
information?
that'd be great. That's I think
Okay.
where it can get a little bit confusing.
So basically, if how can I explain it? So if there's a person that is registered um as a investment advisor, um, but they also have a broker firm, right? But they also have a securities license as well. And so they have that where they can pay under their business or their individual license. And so if you are a single member LLC and you have a securities license, but you also have your broker firm, you can choose which one to pay under. You wouldn't have to pay under both.
And this is only for single member LLCs, right?
Correct.
They can
Correct.
choose because the single member is the licensed person. So
Right.
they're
It
either
would be
paying
that
that
it
that
would be
fee
that
for
individual that owns that
right.
broker firm. Correct. And so
And
they would be able to choose either one. They wouldn't
okay.
have to pay under both.
So if that person that is licensed, the single member LLC, if they're licensed under the actual LLC and they were to leave and go to work for another firm, they would need to then switch it to their individual license.
They
Is that
can
right?
choose.
Okay.
So like I stated, they wouldn't have to pay under the single member LLC and their individual account. Like I
Right.
said, they can choose either one,
Perfect.
because we
Okay.
wouldn't make them pay under both. Correct.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. I don't know why
Yes,
that
ma'am.
one topic gets confusing for me.
It is. It's very confusing, especially when um you have a licensed as securities agent as well as your firm is registered in the state of Tennessee. So that can be a little confusing because you want to pay for your firm, but you also want to make sure that you pay for yourself. So
And you don't want to
we
double
would
pay. So
right, and we would rather you just choose
Mhm.
which account that you would prefer to pay
That makes
under.
sense. And
Hmm.
just to clarify, CRD, Central Registration Depository, IARD is Investment Advisor Registration Depository. And
Correct.
these are both electronic filing systems for securities
Right.
firms and
Per FINRA.
individuals.
Per FINRA.
FINRA.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you for clarifying
Yeah,
that,
no
Demi.
problem.
I'm just going to go over here a few exceptions to Profi. Uh, In-house counsel that doesn't have an active Tennessee license does not have a liability for Profi. Additionally, attorneys who are suspended should be treated as inactive for Profi purposes. Individuals who are registered in Tennessee only as investment advisor representatives and who are not also registered here as agents are not liable for Profi. Another exemption or the exemption to Profi, there's a military exemption. It does not apply, this tax does not apply to any active U.S. military member if that military member has served more than 180 days during the year prior to the due date of the privilege tax. So with this upcoming due date, for example, June 1st, which will be here, I believe that falls on, yeah, that's Sunday, next Sunday. If there's a military member that has served 180 days or more in the year prior to this coming June 1st. So in the three out of the 365 days prior to June 1st served 180 days or more, then they would not need to, they do not owe Profi. Also, a U.S. military member can be eligible for a delayed filing if they don't have to pay until 180 days after deployment in a combat zone ends or 180 days after the member is transferred out of a combat zone. So this part's very important. The exemption must be supported by orders documenting either the 180 days or more of active duty during the qualifying period or proof of deployment in an active combat zone. All right, so the rate and due date information here. The rate is $400 if a license is active on June 1st. If you've already put in to cancel your license before June 1st, but it's still active on June 1st, then the $400 is due. Something that's a little bit different about Pro-Fee as opposed to compared to all the other taxes that we have. For Pro-Fee, you're paying for the upcoming year. So, whereas with most taxes, you're paying for the previous year. The tax period is the previous year. So you're paying upfront for having an active license on June 1st. So if June 1st does fall on a weekend or a holiday, it will be due the next day. So this is a perfect example. This year, June 1st does fall on a Sunday. So June 2nd, the tax will be due on June 2nd. So if you've got an active license as of June 1st, that payment of $400 will be due on June 2nd. The liability is not affected by your residence, what state you live in, where your office is located, or how much revenue is attributable to clients here in Tennessee. It is only affected by whether or not you have an active Tennessee registration or license for these particular occupations that are subject to Pro-Fee. The Tennessee Department does transmit to the applicable boards and agencies a list of taxpayers who are delinquent, who have not paid about 90 days out from the due date. So a few months after June 1st, June, July, August, around September 1, I guess that is, we will transmit to all the boards and agencies a list of who is delinquent. And if you need a license active, or registration active, you don't want to fall into that boat. And Demi noted this a couple slides ago, only one payment of $400 is due regardless of the number of licenses a professional may have that are subject to the tax. So if you are an attorney and a broker dealer, you only owe the $400 once. All right, how to pay. There is an exception to online paying. We will touch on that in just a minute, just one small exception, but generally speaking, online filing is required. If you already have a TNTAP account, you can pay by clicking on Pay Now next to your Pro-Fee account, but it's not uncommon for individuals with Pro-Fee to not have a TNTAP account, and it's very easy. You can see here the steps to take. You're going to go to tntap.tn.gov. If you already, like I mentioned, if you already have a TNTAP log on, you can easily do it from there. But otherwise, you're just going to click on Returns, View Return Links, and then Professional Privilege Tax. We're going to talk here in a minute about making payments for multiple individuals. That can only be done through a TNTAP account. After you click on that professional privilege tax link for quick paying, you will get to choose whether you want to do ACH debit or a credit card. A debit card is considered a credit card in terms of making this payment. ACH debit is using your bank account. There's just a few pieces of information that are going to be required. You can see there's a link here about if you don't know your account ID, you can click the link to get that information. But basically, you're just going to be asked to provide information specific to you as a customer. It says here your social security number, your account ID, and tax due date. You only need 2 out of the 3 of these in order to identify your account, between the social, the account ID, and your license number. If you don't have one of those, just provide 2 of the other. Lobbyists who have no license number, you'll just enter a 0 in that license ID field. As you can see here, if you see the little red asterisk, those are required fields, your contact name, email address, and phone number as well. One thing to note here, you'll use your CRD number as your license number. Okay, so bulk filing. Bulk filing allows you to submit one payment for multiple individuals by submitting a file containing each individual's account information. This is very common with big firms. We do have a link here. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about this, but there's great information, everything you would need to know in this guide to bulk filing. You'll see a link here that it's going to include instructions for preparing and submitting the file and frequently asked questions. We have a dedicated email box just for bulk filing, and it's broker.dealers@tn.gov. Just a note here, it is the individual's responsibility to pay, but a company may remit payment on the individual's behalf. I do know that uh, I've seen before where an agent may change companies, and the company they've switched to handles it differently, and now they're going to be in charge of making their own, and they don't really realize that. So it's important to make sure you know, if you're an individual, you know whether the company you're working for, the firm, does bulk filing, or whether you're going to be responsible for your own. There's a very specific format that it has to be in. More details about that can be found if you follow this link. Okay, I mentioned earlier there is one exception for paper filing. This was a law that just passed last year, actually, Public Chapter 672. Persons who are 65 years of age or older are authorized to file and remit pro-fee in paper form in lieu of electronic form. If you've got the PDF of this, here is a link. You can click on this hyperlink. It takes you directly over to the paper form. And again, that is only for persons who are 65 years of age or older. All right, we often get this question, how to print a receipt. So after you submit your payment, one way to do it is to just print the confirmation. A confirmation screen will pop up, screenshot that. That's one way to have a receipt. Also, if you have a TINTAP logon, if you have access to multiple taxpayers, you select the taxpayer, select the More tab, and then click Search Submissions. You'll select the payment submission and then print. If you do not have a TINTAP logon, in the TINTAP help section, there's a link that says view additional services. So this is from the TINTAP home. You'll click on the little help tile and then view additional services. From there, there's an option to retrieve a saved submission and then enter your confirmation code, click submit, and you can print it from there. So a few different ways there to be able to print a receipt. All right, obtaining tax clearance. You can look up whether a pro-fee account is in good standing with us. Go to the TINTAP homepage, click on the Information and Inquiries tab, and then under that, click on View Options. From there, you'll click Professional Privilege Status and provide the account number, license number, and license type, and then click Search. If your board does not issue license numbers, you will not be able to use this tool, but you can always call us. We'll provide this number to you again, but our Taxpayer Services call center number is 615-253-0600, and we'll help you out with obtaining your tax clearance letter. That way we can email it to you or send it out in the mail to you. I mentioned earlier there's a link over to account number lookup when you go in to make a payment for professional privilege tax. There's also a way just to look it up without being in that payment screen. You go to TINTAP and then select View Options again under that Information Inquiries tab and do professional privilege lookup there. You'll enter your Social Security or ITIN, the profession, and then the license number. Here you see just a listing of the various regulatory boards that are in charge of the professions that are liable for pro-fee, agent securities, attorney, broker-dealer, agents, investment advisors, and lobbyists. You see here the department that is in charge there and the division or board and a phone number. Pro-fee is pretty cut and dry, y'all, I will say. I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat. Demi and Billy, if y'all want to go ahead and come back in here, I will open up the chat and we'll take your questions.
Thank you very much, Katie. Yeah, so there's a lot of information, a few small slides or a few slides relative to some of our other presentations that we do, but thank you very much for that good information. Demi, so in dealing with the different things that come up in your unit with the professional privilege tax, what would you say some of the main challenges are that relate to this tax?
Yeah. I would say the dates, if anything. I know the dates can be a little confusing. Because of course, like Katie mentioned in the previous slide, that you pay professional privilege tax a year in advance. Um, for instance, right now, everyone is going to be paying for the 2026 period, which is through June 2nd of 2025 through June 1st of 2026. So I know a lot of people get confused about that, as well as giving us their information to provide. Because when we receive their information from the boards, we don't receive all of their information. So there's usually a social that is missing from the information that is provided. And I say that if you haven't received anything from the Tennessee Department of Revenue by the middle of April, I would say, then definitely fill out a application for professional privilege tax and go ahead and fill it out and send it to the email that's provided on the top of that application. So then we can go ahead and get that person registered, get them in the system, so then they can go ahead and get that payment made. But those two are the main things that I've seen
Yeah.
that people have some type of confusion about when regarding professional privilege tax.
Okay, that's a good point too. One thing that we see, my team, we do a lot of email
Mhm.
and we see a lot of
Goodness.
things on our side. Um, and this goes really for all the different taxes that we administer. There's almost 30 different kinds of taxes in Tennessee, and so we're sort of busy.
Right,
But
right.
across the board with TINTAP, one of the main things people should realize, I think, is that you can go in now, like today, as we record this, we're just a few days ahead of that magic June 1st deadline, right? So
Mhm.
today is a great day to go on to TINTAP or to go out on or a non-TINTAP logon situation like Katie was saying, and go ahead and key in your payment information. And you can set it up to where your payment comes out on June 1st. Okay. So
Yeah.
a lot of people are want to pay towards the end of that time to keep the money in the bank. That's fine. There's no problem with
Mhm.
that. But what we're definitely encouraging you to do is to do this in advance of the actual due date. So it's very clear
Yes.
that you're going to run into trouble if you're not careful. All right.
Right. With
So,
ACH debit, yes, they can definitely set up a certain date to get that
right,
paid. Yep.
right. And being
Correct.
safe than sorry is a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Because you don't want this to come back on you. So yes, most definitely trying to get that paid ahead in advance. And if you aren't trying to be licensed anymore, definitely get in contact with the boards ahead in advance so you can go ahead and get your license termed.
Yes, very important, very important. So I noticed a couple of questions have come up here regarding some of the issues about tax, like why do we pay Tennessee tax when we already pay FINRA fees, or why are seniors obligated to pay the professional privilege tax? Guys, I don't know what else to tell you except that the Tennessee legislature, the General Assembly, passes laws in Tennessee. The Department of Revenue does not. So the reason this tax exists is because it's statutorily required in the state of Tennessee for those individuals or people who are licensed for these taxable professions. So, we're not going to be able to comment on the whys and all that. We don't do the why. We do the helpful part of here's the tax and here's what we can do to help you on that. So, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to give you an answer that you're looking for on that. Um,
We've got a question from Mike in here about if you only manage your parents' money, are you subject to this fee? A couple follow-up questions from him. He doesn't live in Tennessee, but I guess his parents do. He's only managing his parents' money. Now, Demi, if he has a FINRA registration for license to be able to have clients in Tennessee, that's what the tax is going to be based on. It doesn't matter if they're his
It doesn't
parents or
matter,
strangers.
right? If you
Okay.
live, work in Tennessee, you would still owe the tax only because you are licensed. It's based off your licensure. It's
Okay.
not based off if you live in Tennessee, if you work in Tennessee, if you have somebody that you're dealing with that like you said, he handles his parents' money. Unfortunately, you would still owe the tax because you would be licensed.
But
So
however, let me say it this way. There's many people that manage their parents' money that
mhm,
do not have a professional license from a
correct,
licensing board. So these people are not subject to that. And I'm not
correct,
sure, Mike, if you're that person, but you'll know if you're licensed. Typically licensed people are going to sell to the public. They're going to be licensed to sell to all kinds of clients, right? So that's your typical situation. But like Demi's saying, I mean, could be either way, really, but more than likely is probably not,
right.
in my opinion, anyway.
The to me, the pretty cut and dry would be if you're licensed in the state, you would have to pay the professional privilege tax.
Hmm. That's right. That's
A
right. And that
question
license
Danny
is so
has here.
important.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
A good question from Danny. If I hold a broker and an AIR license, so two licenses, do I have to pay 800 or only 400?
If he's a broker dealer and he has a securities
Mm-hmm.
license, um, yes, only because that securities license, he would have to pay. He wouldn't have to pay both. He would just have to pay for that securities license,
Okay.
not the other license.
Mhm. And if you, and to me, I think you'll back me up on this. If people get double billed for whatever reason, and then for some odd, strange thing, and our computer sets them up twice, well, they just need to reach out to us, right, and let
Yes,
us
yes, they
adjust
would
that.
need to reach out to us, and we would
Yeah.
definitely be able to go in and fix and handle and rectify that situation immediately.
One thing in Katie's presentation that I picked up on is something that's sort of a rare bird, but it does happen, is on that military exemption. So the military exemption that Katie explained was talking about the 180 days requirement, active
Hmm.
duty, and all that other stuff, right? So
Right.
sometimes our military members will be like, well, I told you I was exempt last year, and here you are billing me again this year. Well,
Right.
the reason for that is because we don't know from year to year if your situation changes or not.
Changes.
We do not
Hmm.
have access to your military orders or anything like that. So, military members seeking that exemption need to let us know so that Demi and her staff can make adjustments
Hmm.
accordingly so that we don't bill you inappropriately for something that you
Right.
are actually
Right.
exempt from.
And we'll definitely let you know if what type of documentation we need. We'll be very specific when you contact us about it. We'll
Mhm.
let you know.
Yep. Very good. Very good. What else, y'all? Well, what else? Is there anybody seeing anything else in our chat that we need to bring up?
I think this is a good question because some people do get confused about just the timeline of everything. Let's see. Pam says if you acquired a Tennessee license in May of 2025, are you required to pay for the previous year or just 2026? So let's talk about the timeline here. Because like I said, with
Yeah.
Profi, it's kind of handled a little bit
Mhm.
differently than other taxes, which are going to be for the previous year. So this person, Pam, acquired a license in May of 2025.
Yes, so you would have to pay the tax for 2026.
And when you say 2026, it's kind of like a
It's
halfway
you're
through the
paying
year.
it a
So if
year in
you're,
advance.
yeah,
So
Yeah,
with
it's
whatever year that you are in now, it's going to be for that year that's coming up.
right.
yeah, it's very unusual. It's the only tax that we have that's like that.
Yes.
Very strange.
And
Well,
that's
I won't
why
say
I
it's the only
explained.
one, but it's almost the only one. Yeah.
Mhm. And that's why I explained the dates. I know the dates can be a little difficult and it's a little confusing. But May of 2025, you would owe the tax for 2026.
So if that license is active on June 1st of 2025, you owe the $400 and then you're paying for the future year, for the 2025, 2026 year.
Well, this year, the professional privilege tax is due June 2nd.
Oh, right. Yeah, because it's on
Only
a Sunday.
because
Yeah.
June 1st, yes, is a Sunday, so it's going
Right.
to be due
Bonus
June
day.
2nd.
Mhm.
But please make sure that you have everything situated and handled before the June 2nd date.
Right. Let
Because
me
after
make
that
a
June,
public service announcement on behalf
yes,
of the licensing boards that Katie had flashed the information up about the phone numbers. Folks, what you have to understand is these licensing boards are or what do they do? Well, they license people. You know, they ensure that your license is good. If there's a fee that's involved in their office, they charge that, et cetera, and they update their databases and all that. So again, as we record this in late May of 2025, we're coming up on that June 1st date. My strong advice is if you are licensed and you don't want to be licensed in Tennessee anymore, today is a great day to do this because you've got to get this done in advance. Running to the licensing board at the last minute is probably not going to work out for you. And I'm not trying to preach to you, I'm just trying to tell you the truth. They are inundated with phone calls this time of year. And so be very smart about that and be proactive so that you can get that adjusted in any way that you need to. Because as Katie mentioned in her presentation, if you are licensed, regardless of, well, I sent an email in, the day before and they didn't respond back, that's not going to work out for you and you're going to owe $400. Okay. And again, not trying to play the bad guy or anything like that, just trying to be very real with you about it so that you understand how important it is. Okay.
So you all
once it,
may be seeing some answers that Deidre and Dan are putting in the chat, but you want to know what the questions are. I'm just going to kind of go through a couple of those. Jessica asked, if payment is not received, at what point would a license be terminated? And you may have seen an answer from Deidre at Jessica. The license will be inactivated, deactivated based on your board. We can't answer that question. The boards are going to, how much leeway they give you, how much, we can't answer that. We just share with the boards and regulatory agencies who has paid and who has not. So,
hmm And it's like you're looking at, and also going back to the whole idea of the June 1st thing. It's like taking a snapshot on that day. It's like you're taking your camera and you're taking a shot of June 1st. That's a taxable event. You either have a license on that day, an active license, or you don't.
it's pretty simple.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
right.
Let's see. Here's another question from Mad Hussery. I don't know how to say that. We are a broker dealer registered with FINRA and pay the pro fee through the payments department directly to the bank account and not using ACH debit or credit card options. Since there is no individual logging into the TNTAP account, the fee still shows as due in spite of being paid. How can we communicate on such payments? Deidre answered this one, you may have seen in the chat. When you file a batch known as bulk payment, you will list the names and accounts the payments would need to be applied to. That's part of that formatting issue that we were talking about, that you can, if you follow the link to the guide about how to do bulk filing, on the CSV file that you submit, you're required to list out the individual. What's the information there, Demi? It's like individual, their
It's going to be
social.
their social, their license number, their address, um, and their account numbers.
Great.
It's going to be spread out. The book filing guide is perfect because it goes through step by step on what you need within that CSV file, and how to troubleshoot. And of course, like you gave in the slide previously, they can reach out to that broker dealer's email and they'll be able to assist them from there. And if there's anything that we need to assist with, broker dealers will definitely let us know and then we'll assist from there.
Go back to that slide real quick just to have that handy here.
Yes, because that bulk filing guide is really, really helpful.
So we had a question from Livonia, and looks like Dan and Deidre both addressed this. They also have a sales tax account. Do they still owe pro fee? Those tax accounts are totally independent from each other. You can have a F&E tax account, a business tax account, a sales and use tax account, and a professional privilege tax account. Just because you're paying another tax, each tax type is completely independent of the other.
And a franchise and excise account as well.
Mm-hmm.
It could be lots of different things, that's for sure. But basically, someone asked possibly, if you're late and is there a date that fees will be charged? Well, sort of. What we try to do is work with our taxpayers as much as we can, and we will typically bill for that in the upcoming months. To me, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then interest may be charged on that, and certain times penalty is as well. So it's important to try to get it all done before June 1st. In this case, this year, June 2nd, like we were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A couple
Was
people
there-
state that they joined a little bit late. Which professions owe this tax or are subject to professional privilege tax? So I'm just going to kind of put this back out here again. And in a nutshell, if you are registered as a lobbyist, licensed or registered as agent, broker dealer, investment advisor, or licensed as an attorney by the Supreme Court of Tennessee, then the pro fee $400 is due if your license or registration is active on June 1st. So just to recap all of that, here we go. And again, for these professions, licensed or registered under Title 48, we're talking about licensed or registered in Tennessee. So if you have any clients, doesn't matter if it's one client or 100, doesn't matter if those clients are your parents or strangers, whatever. If you hold an active Tennessee registration license on June 1st, then pro fee is due.
Right.
Is there any other questions?
I know the list of taxable professions has certainly got smaller over the years. That's
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. And
Mhm.
I will say this for those of you that are concerned about the law and why does this and all that, we understand. Believe me, we do. But we do see every year in our Tennessee legislature proposals to eliminate this tax. And it seems like over the past few years that those are not approved in committee and they don't make it out for a vote. Katie, is that what you believe too? That's what I'm thinking and I'm
Yeah,
remembering.
I mean, except for all of these right here that a couple
Right.
years
For
ago.
whatever reason, those
Yeah.
made it through.
But
And
the ones
don't
that
know.
remain year after year, at this point, at the time that we are recording this webinar in May of 2025, these are the remaining professions that are still liable.
Right.
We did get a question from Tom about let's see, say here, there have been a few individuals on the bulk filing that got rejected for some reason. I see that Deidre here says for issues with bulk filing, because there could be lots of different reasons for that. Just reach out to this broker.dealers@tn.gov email address. Let me go back to that slide here.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like we're getting several questions about bulk filing.
Mhm.
Where is it?
Let
Here
me
we go.
make a public service announcement for the people that work in that area. And this is crunch time for them, so they probably have quite a few requests on that. So for those of you that'll be bulk filing in the future, make sure you line all this stuff up ahead of time, in weeks ahead of time. We've had a lot of people contact us even in April, late April, trying to get their bulk filing and things like that worked out.
Mhm.
all the bugs and issues or whatever, and then essentially remitting the payment, closer to the June 1st due date. Great. We're good with that. We just need to work with you. So if you would help us help you and not sort of wait to the last sort of second here, if you know what I'm saying, that would be very helpful.
Looks like questions have pretty much slowed down. There were a few questions that we weren't able to get to. If your question did not get answered, send us an email. Let me go all the way over to
Please.
here. Might need to do a little bit more research, or maybe it's a specific question that we want to just handle with you directly. Here are the ways to contact us and follow Department of Revenue. Specifically to contact us, you can email revenue.support@tn.gov, or you can call our general tax line at 615-253-0600. And again, regarding bulk filing, the email address is broker.dealers@tn.gov. Matthew is asking us, can we receive CPE credit for this? I was just about to get to that. Yes, you can. First, real quick, let me just touch on, we've got a few upcoming webinars that I want to tell you all about next month. Closing a business. That one is going to be pretty awesome. Nobody likes to think about closing their business, but there are some pretty specific guidelines and procedures to go about doing it correctly. You don't want to end up in collections or owing penalties and interest. How to close it out, how to close things out right. Very excited about our July webinar, legislative updates with with Jeff Foster from Department of Revenue's legal team. And then in August, we've got manufacturing exemptions. We do have a new business workshop coming up very soon on July 9th. To register for webinars and for new business workshops, you go from tn.gov/revenue. You'll click on taxpayer education and outreach, and then either webinars or new business workshops. And again, there'll be a survey when you exit this webinar. And one of the questions on that survey is, do you need CPE credit? If you don't need CPE credit, please feel free to fill out our survey and give us some feedback. How did we do? And if you have any ideas for future webinars, I just want to give a special shout out to Demi for helping us this month. Really enjoyed having your expertise today and leading up to today as we were putting things together. And
Yeah, thank you for
Mhm.
having me. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we thank you, and thanks to Deirdre and Dan as well, and
Yeah.
Katie, you also you prepare these and you do a great job.
thank you.
And for everybody that attended today, thank you. You took time out of your day to educate yourself a little bit more on taxes. So we really do appreciate that, and thank you.
All right, we'll see you next month. Take care.
Have a good day, everybody.